And God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant and faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you'll do just what you said. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast. And let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. God from age to age, though the earth may pass away, your word remains the same. Your history can prove there's nothing you can't do. You're faithful and true. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast. And let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my
Hey, welcome to Prairie Lakes Church. I'm Cody, the digital pastor here. And before anything else, we need you to hear that we're a no matter church. What that means is no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, or even what's been done to you, we need you to hear that God loves you. He really does. And you can look for him here with us. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to clean yourself up to be here. We're just really glad that you're here. And if you're new or even newer and you haven't taken that step of becoming known, my encouragement to you today is to take that. Because what we know is connected people are growing people. When you get connected, when you ask questions, when you meet other people, God uses that in significant ways. So you can take that step here today by filling out our welcome card. And as a thank you, I'll send you an Amazon gift card for taking the 30 seconds to fill that out. So right now, in this moment, to get to that, all you need to do is text PLC to 99581. And a celebration that we do here is child dedications. And as a parent, child dedication is one of the most significant things that you can do for your child. It is committing before the church that you're going to raise them to know God and be intentional about the direction to get them there. And it's just true that as parents, you have by far the most time with them. You have by far the most influence with them. We want to partner with you in that. And this decision at an early age in your child's life to be intentional about their direction is so significant. So we'd love to help you take that step to join in on that celebration. And if you want to learn more, right now you can click the link in the chat, or you can go to prairielakechurch.org/children to learn more. And the next step that we take here is giving generously. And giving generously is just a significant spiritual step in your discipleship journey. So if you haven't taken that step, I encourage you to consider that here today. You can give online right now at prairielakes.org/give, and you can select your campus from the dropdown. But we're going to continue in our leadership series and hear from Pastor John here today.
Hey, Prairie Lakes family, great job getting engaged. We're so glad that we get to do this together all across Iowa and beyond. So really good job. Don't ever forget this. At Prairie Lakes Church, we're a no matter church. We're no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, or what's been done to you, right? God loves you, and you can always look for God here. Now does that mean anything? No, we don't want you to stay stuck. It does matter that you don't stay stuck, but man, let's go together, and we're glad that we can do this. All right, so here's what we're doing. We're talking about leadership, and Pastor Jesse kicked this off last week and really did a great job. And he started with this. He literally told us like the truth about leadership. And here's what it is. It's hard, right? All of us know that. All of us who are leaders know that. And by the way, all of us lead in some capacity, whether it's leading ourselves, leading our family, whether it's a supervisor or a director or a team or a coach. We were all leaders in different ways, okay? But here's what Jesse said. He said, women and men are dropping out of leadership today at an astonishing pace. And if they aren't dropping out physically, they want to drop out, and some are dropping out emotionally. And here's what we believe at Prairie Lakes. We believe the stakes are just too high. Leadership matters more than ever. It does. And we want to help keep leaders in the game. That's why we're talking about this. Okay, so let's go. So this is your rope, okay? This is your rope. And some of us, we all do this at times, but some of us, this is the standard mode of operating, okay? Some of us are leading from the very end of our rope, okay? We're leading from the end of our rope. We're leading our families, our organizations, our teams, our departments from the end of our rope, okay? And here's what we know, right? This doesn't work. It just won't, okay? It just won't. Here's the point today. If you walk out, forget everything else, remember this, that margin, okay? We're talking about margin. Margin is the buffer between where you are on your rope and the end of your rope. And if you have no margin as a leader, it's going to be messy. And in fact, it's a horrible place to be. If you lead from the end of your rope, it's a horrible spot to lead from. How do I know this? Because at age 59, being in ministry for 32 years, being at Prairie Lakes Church as a senior leader for 24 years, moving this place from an inward-focused single site to an outward-focused multi-site, from one employee to multiple employees, for a little bit of money to a lot more money, with a mission to reach Iowa and the hope and good news of Jesus. I can tell you this, that our worst times as an organization were when I was leading from the end of my rope with no buffer and with no margin. So what's that look like as a leader? Let me confess. Let me be vulnerable, okay? So when my no margin leadership, okay, my end of rope leadership, here's what it looks like. And unfortunately, there are too many of you that you can name these for me, okay? So here it is, right? This is ugly. When I'm at the end of my rope and I'm leading from there, I develop a savior complex. I want to save everybody, fix everybody, nobody else can do it. And it's my responsibility and my job, and I carry all of them. And it's too great of a weight to carry. When I'm at my end of rope, here's what I do. I hide and disappear. I do. I avoid people. Normally, I'm a pastor that loves contact. I start avoiding it when I'm there. I can't say no to anybody or anything. Why? Because I can't stand it when I'm at the end of my rope if somebody doesn't like me, if I'm not pleasing everybody. Busy equals important, right? So you got to be busy. Eugene Peterson is the one who first, I remember coining that phrase in his book, Contemplative Pastor. And he said, listen, busy in front of pastor is like adulterer in front of husband. They shouldn't go together. And this is too often where we live. If I just be busy, if I'm busy, that means I'm important. How you doing today? Oh, I'm really busy. Okay. And I leak unhealthy emotions onto others. And here's the real stinker with this one right here. The real stinker with this one is when I'm leading from here, what's inside of me has no place to process, and then it leaks out. And the real problem with that is usually for us as leaders, it leaks out onto the ones we love the most, our family. We take it home, and it leaks out on them, okay? So if you lead from the end of your rope, okay, then here's what happens, and in the end, here's what it begins to look like. You are a life-draining leader instead of a life-giving leader. And my friends, we can't do this. We can't do it anymore. And if we're going to stay in the game, and if we're going to lead well, and we're going to change the world, if you're going to change your family, we can't lead from the end of the rope any longer. Now, this thing called margin isn't my idea, okay? It's not my idea, and I didn't invent this at all. But here's what we know, and we all know this, that it's literally embedded in who we are. It's how we're created. If you go back to the creation account, God throws it in there, right, as the model of our lives, right? So in the creation account, He creates the world in 6 days, and then it says this in Genesis 2:2, by the seventh day, God had finished the work He had been doing, so on the seventh day, He rested from all His work. So here's God pushing us, building in this kind of the model of who we are and what we need. He modeled it for us. And then later, when Moses, got the 10 Commandments from God, and the 10 Commandments are how do we live in correct and proper relationship with God, and how do we live in correct and proper relationship with others. So God sends those 10 Commandments down, and here's the one in Exodus verses 8 to 10. It says, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. And He says, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God, right? So we're not inventing this. This idea of margin is created in the very fabric of our life. We weren't meant to live, and especially lead, from the end of our rope. Now, Jesus was the greatest leader of all time, right, to ever walk the face of the earth. Nobody had a greater mission, and nobody had more demand than Jesus. And yet, what did He model? You just glance through the Gospels, and here's this picture of Jesus that we just kind of get with a glance. Jesus needed margin. Again and again, we see these phrases. He got away from the crowds. He would go up to the hills. He would go out on the boat. He went out to a lonely place. He would step back and breathe. We just see this again and again and again in Jesus. And my friends, if we continue to lead from the end of our rope, we're going to be draining leaders, not life-giving leaders. Now listen, when we're talking about this, I know that creating margin is going to be risky, okay? It'll cause some turmoil with you, and it's going to cause some turmoil with others. What will my boss or my shareholders think? What will my team think? What what's going to happen because my identity is wrapped up in production and pleasing others. Yep, and yep. But the better question is this. What is the cost to you if you continue to lead, whether it's your family or your organization, from the end of your rope? What's the cost to you, yourself, your health, your spirit, your system, your soul? What's the cost to your family if you keep hanging on there? What's the cost to your team, to your people, to your organization if you continue to operate? Now, friends, we're going to talk about margin. At the very end, the CPs are going to come up and we're going to talk about how, but here's what I want to do. Here's what can happen if you can get off the end of the rope. Here's what can happen. There's 3 of them. Here's the first one. Margin, okay? Margin is the space where your priorities stay stacked, okay? Where priorities stay stacked. Listen, when you live and when you lead from the end of your rope, right, you're barely hanging on. Here's what goes first. All the stuff that you say is first, all the stuff that you say is matter, all the stuff that you have listed as the values of our family and of our culture, of our company, all those things, they are lost when you're hanging and leading from the end of the rope. They go away. But margin is the space where priorities get stacked, where the tyranny of the urgent can subside, when the things that I want to do first quit getting demoted to second or third or fourth or nowhere. Margin is a space where what I say matters the most never gets actually modeled in my real life. Margin is a space where I can correct that. Margin is a space where that can stop. Let me give you this example of Jesus and the life of Jesus, because listen, like I said, nobody had more demands than Jesus. Nobody had a greater mission than Jesus, okay? But even Jesus needed margin to keep his priorities stacked. From Mark 1, it's the very early parts of Jesus' ministry. And it says this. So what leads up to this is they come to town and they start to heal people. And pretty soon, everybody hears that Jesus is there. They're at Peter's house, Peter's mother-in-law's house. And people are coming in from all over the place, from all the surrounding villages. And it's the sick and the demon-possessed and the lost and the hopeless. And they're all coming in because they want Jesus to heal them. But very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up. He left the house and went off to a solitary place, notice that, where he prayed. He went off where he could have margin to get off the end of the rope and the tyranny of the urgent. And he prayed. And Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone's looking for you," right? So you can see it, right? Other people have different priorities for you. They had them for Jesus. Jesus, everybody's lining up, man. Let's go. Let's get down there. We got to set up shop and we can do this thing. And then, listen, we can be famous and we can really make this go and we can actually earn some money off of this, right? So you're going to find this. Whether it's your family, whatever leadership role you play, if you lead from here, one of the first things to go is this: your priorities get unstacked. But what's Jesus do? He goes off and they come after him. And what's he able to salvage? What's he able to say? And what's he able to do because he created margin? He replied this: "Let us go somewhere else." If you're to stop and you're going, "What?" Let us go somewhere else to the nearby villages so I can preach there also. That is why I have come. Do you see that? All the demands. And listen, you have demands, I have demands, moms have demands, dads have demands, coaches have demands, leader bosses. Okay, we all have demands. But here's Jesus. That is why I have come. You see, margin is the space where your priorities can stay stacked. I've worked for 19 years with a gal. In fact, her office is about 40 feet from mine at the Central Service Building. Her name is Sarah Fitz. Now, I've known Sarah longer than that because when she was in college, she came to Prairie Lakes, and that's where she had her moment. She stepped over the faith line, which is when she said, "I can't save myself. I can't fix myself. I'm a sinner, and I don't know what to do." And that's when she surrendered her life, and she raised her hands and said, I need you, Jesus. And she stepped over the faith line, and she said yes to him. And she became a follower of Jesus, and she's been walking this trail of a no-matter follower. But here's what Sarah has taught me. Sarah a gal that has consistently over the years, and again, 19 years we've worked together as teammates. She consistently has margin in her life, and what she does with her margin is this. She keeps her priorities stacked. And how do I know that? Because for 19 years, she's kept her one priority, always her one priority. Underneath the banner of Jesus, here's what Sarah says: my number one priority is my relationships, and in particular, my relationships with you and I, female athletes. And Sarah has chapeled the women's volleyball, the women's basketball team at UNI, and many others. Sarah has relationships around the country of gals that she's led to Christ, of gals that she's still their pastor, she's still their mentor. And here's what Sarah has done. Sarah has said, no matter what comes my way, she could have switched jobs a long time ago and made more money. She could have switched jobs a long time ago and got more prestige, but she has stayed in this. And why? And she said this multiple times, outside of God calling her to stay here, she said, because it allows me to keep my priorities straight and feed into my one priority, which is my relationship with gals so they can see Jesus at work in me. My friends, listen. If you lead too long from the end of the rope, your priorities are going to get unstacked. Your priorities are going to get misaligned. And eventually the things you say that are most important, like my faith and my family and whatever comes next, pretty soon your calendar doesn't reflect your faith or your family. And it reflects all kinds of other things. My friends, if we get off the end of the rope, margin is a space where priorities can stay stacked. All right, let's go to the next one, okay? Here's what can happen if you get off the end of the rope. Margin is a space where not only priorities stay stacked, but emotions and responses get checked. This is absolutely crucial. Because you saw from my mistakes, almost all of the stuff that kind of leaks out of me when I'm leading from here, right? Almost all of it is damaging, not just to me, but to others, because almost all of it leaks around. Have you ever been around a person whose emotions were unchecked and responses were unpredictable? The answer is yes. You probably don't look at them right now, okay? But catch this. When I was going to be a freshman in college, and then for my summer before my sophomore, before my junior, and before my senior year in college, I worked construction at the same place in Sheridan, Wyoming. And I learned this lesson very early. Whenever the big boss came on the site, and we did commercial stuff, so I was a hod carrier and form scraper and hole digger and carrying the plywood out. That was my job, and I loved it. But whenever the boss came on, everybody got quiet. Everybody put their head down and kept working and didn't make eye contact, because you never knew. You never knew what kind of a mood he was going to be in, what kind of emotion he was going to spur, right? And he was always frantic, and money and the job, and he was always leading from the end of his rope. And one time I was the target. We're working on the fire station in Sheridan, Wyoming. It was a new one, 40 years ago, whatever that was now. But I'm working on the fire station, and I'm shoveling gravel because we're getting ready to pour some concrete, and we're getting it all, spread out. We're doing our thing. We're pulling up the rebar. We're doing all that. And he drives up, and I'm new. I don't know this yet. And he sees me as the new guy, and he's mad about something that happened in the office, and he walks up to me, comes to a skidding stop. He walks up to me, grabs the shovel. I'm an 18-year-old kid, right? And here's this is my first real job. I worked, but this is construction. And he grabs a shovel from me, and he starts shoveling, and he goes, "This is how you do it, you blankety, 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 blankety." And I'm standing there just shaking and in tears. And my friends, listen. That doesn't do anybody any good. And if you parent that way, lead your family that way, you're killing them. And if you're leading your organization or your department or your team that way, it's draining. And you're going to leave bodies all over the place. You can't do that. We can't. The end of the rope gives you no room to regulate your emotion, and it causes serious damage, and you'll spill. It just can't be that way. We can't. I want us all to turn to a passage of the Bible, and I want you to see this example of David, King David of the Old Testament. So everybody turn to 1 Samuel 24, okay? 1 Samuel 24. So remember, that's an Old Testament book. Now, use your phone if you want to. Grab the Bible on the chair around you, but get to 1 Samuel 24. Now, here's how I remember these, okay? So it's the first 5 are, pretty easy. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Then we have JJR, Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. And then you have 1st, 2nd Samuel, 1st, 2nd Kings, 1st, 2nd Chronicles. So go to 1 Samuel and go to 24. Now, this is the story of David before he was actually the king, okay? And here's what we know about David. Here's what we know, especially about his early life. God picked him. God anointed him. See, Saul was the leader of Israel, and he became a terrible leader, okay? He was disobedient to God. He did things for his own glory instead of God's glory. And God said, "You're done, Saul." And so he names David. David gets anointed as the new future upcoming leader. Well, Saul's still the king, and David's like king in waiting. And what we know about David is this. David's the one who wrote most of the Psalms. David's the one who says he walked with God. David's the one who's described as a friend of God. David's the one who wrote Psalms like Psalm 23, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. That's David, okay? And what we know from the life of David and what he wrote is he spent multiple time with God in the margin. He didn't live from here. He lived from here, and he had lots of room. And in that space, right in that space, is where his emotions and responses could get checked. And so in 1 Samuel 24, we have this scene that happens. Saul is out to kill David because he knows David's been anointed. He knows David is coming, and he's out to get him. So here's what it says in verse 1. We'll kind of go down some of this. So it says, after Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the desert of En-Gedi. So Saul took, and listen to this, 3,000 able young men from all Israel, and he set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. So he's looking for him. This is verse 3. It's got to be one. Just go with it, okay? He came to the sheep pens. Along the way, a cave was there, and Saul went to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. All right, so listen, I'm going to just leave that one there, okay? But you get the picture, right? He goes in to do duty, and farther back in the cave are David and his men hiding, and Saul's there to kill him. And so the men said this. So verse 4 says, the men said, this is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I'll give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. And then David crept up unnoticed, and he cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Okay, now I'm going to go with this story. I'm going to go with Saul took his robe off and set it on the side. Okay, I'm going to go with that. Wherever it happened, he creeps up and he cuts the corner off Saul's robe, right? And afterward, David was conscience-stricken, it says in verse 5, for having cut off a corner of his robe. And he said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord. And with these words, David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way. Just picture this, okay? Saul was out to deliberately kill David. Saul was the heir to the throne. God had anointed him and picked him. And Saul was literally hunting David down. He was disparaging his name. He was literally after him to kill him, bringing 3,000 men, gathering the crowds against him, right? So David, right, if I were in David's shoes, I would be vengeful and I would be angry and I would say, he's not going to win, I'm going to win. But what's David do? It says in verse 8, it says, then David went out of the cave and called out to Saul, my lord the king. And when Saul looked behind him, David was bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. And he said to Saul, why do you listen when men say, David's bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord because he's the Lord's anointed. See, my father? And he holds up, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but I did not kill you. Right? So here's this David, right? David, at that time of his life, was not leading from the end of his rope. And because he wasn't leading from the end of his rope, he had margin, a space where his emotions and responses could get checked. David, who was a friend of God, who he made lie down in green pastures. David, because he wasn't leading from the end of his rope, had space where emotions and responses get checked. I hate it. I shouldn't say hate. I really don't like it. I really don't like it. When I let my emotions lead the way. Emotions are neutral. They're neither good nor bad. They're what God gave us. They're a part of who we are. It's what we do with them and how they get expressed and how we let them inform us that matters the most. I had a mentor when I first became a believer in way back in college. His name was Norman Haupt. And he was just this steady, and he was just this calm, and he was this consistent man. And he wasn't emotionless, but he was never, I knew him for 20 years, and he was never given to unrestrained emotion or letting him, he didn't say things that he had to take back and regret. Did he get angry? Absolutely. Was he frustrated at times? Absolutely. But he never did. I'll never forget this time. You know, I'm this new Christian, and he's mentoring me, and I don't know anything about following Jesus. And I remember one day we went out to lunch, and we're sitting in my car, or his car, and he's dropped me off at my dorm. And we're just talking, and I was just, I was up and down, and, I was all that. And I remember saying to him, I just hate the devil. I hate him. He's always trying. And he just said to me very calmly, he said, hey, even when it comes to the devil, keep the hate out. He'll turn that around and use it again. And I thought, what a wussy. But it's true, right? He just said, I'm not going to give any room, and you shouldn't give any room for emotion to go unchecked. It'll get turned around on top of you. Leader, if you're leading from the end of your rope, here's the deal. You're never going to have time, and you never will stop and say, what is going on inside of me? What's happening inside of me? And if you don't do that, here's what's going to happen. You're going to be the leader who walks in, whether it's your home or your team or your association or your organization or your department. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to be the one who walks in, and everybody's going to be on tiptoes. And pretty soon, they'll quit following the leader that can't check his emotions and responses. You're going to be life-draining, not life-giving. Let's go to the last one, okay? Man, if you can get off the end of your rope, okay? Priorities stay stacked. Emotions, response get checked. And here's the last one. God's voice gets clear. Okay, God's voice gets clear. Now, this is absolutely crucial for us. And there's a part of this that we kind of intuitively get, right? Around Prairie Lakes, we talk all the time about giving God room to speak, about getting quiet. We talk about Sabbath, right? We talk about retreat. We talk about getting quiet and shutting down and quit being, we do it all the time. But we know this. But until we get there, God's voice is really hard to get. It's really not very clear. But when you can quit living here and leading from here, and you can have margin, the space where you're at on the rope and the end of the rope, you can have that buffer. You can get yourself in a spot where you can listen and God's voice gets clear. And we're going to stay in 1 Samuel. I want to just go one more, but I want you to go back to chapter 3, okay? Go back to chapter 3. You see, we know this. It's in the quiet space that God seeks. You got to give him room, and you got to get yourself in a position to listen. There's this beautiful story in Samuel 3, okay? So Samuel became a prophet of God, and Samuel's the one who actually went and named David as the future heir to Saul, right? But this is when he's a little boy. And here's what it says in verse 3, chapter 1. It says, the boy, Samuel, ministered before the Lord under Eli. So Samuel was brought, and because he was a miracle baby, so the mom thought, I'm giving him to the Lord. So he goes and he becomes like a junior priest, okay? The boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli. 1 Samuel 3, verse 1. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many visions. One night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak, Eli was the priest, and he ended up being not a very good one, okay? He was a bad one, actually. His eyes were so weak he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, so it's before bedtime. And Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord where the ark of God was. So listen, you know what he's doing? He's not in bed, okay? He's not in bed. This is before bedtime. And he's in there, he's just sitting with God. He's just in the space, right? He's in the space where God's voice can get clear because God isn't speaking much. And where the ark of God was. And then the Lord called Samuel. And Samuel answered, "Here I am." And he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." But Eli said, "I did not call. Go back and lie down." So he went and lay down. And again the Lord called, "Samuel." And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." "My son," Eli said, "I did not talk back. I did not call. Go back and lie down." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord. The word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. A third time the Lord called Samuel, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, you called me." And then Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. So Eli told Samuel, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now listen, my friends. To hear the voice of God, you've got to have margin. And that margin is a space where you can listen. Where you can listen. And my friends, listen, if you're leading from here, if you're leading your family from here, your marriage from here, your company from here, your department, whatever you're leading, if you're leading from here, what you always eliminate is that space for you to listen to the most important voice that you can listen to, which is God's. It's His. And let me just let me make a side note, okay? So I think that's not intuitive, but I think it makes sense for us, right? Give him room to speak. But let me just take this a step further. Hey, leader, do you have anybody in your life who can look you in the eye and say, "Go back and lie down and listen for God"? And I don't care if you're the leader of a multi-million-dollar organization. You need to have somebody in your life who can look you in the eye and say, "Get off the end of the rope. Go back and lie down and listen to the one voice that matters the most." My friends, this is a horrible way to lead and a horrible way to live. What would your leadership look like if you got off the end of the rope and had margin? What would your family look like if you got off the end of the rope and had margin? What would your soul look like if you got off the end of the rope and had margin? Be a life-giving leader, not a life-draining leader. Margin is the space where priorities stay stacked, emotions and responses get checked, and God's voice gets clear. I want to lead like that. And I want to be led like that.
Thanks for that message, Pastor John. And we want to help you be a leader that leads with margin. So we've curated some resources to help you take some steps in that regard. So right now, if you pull out your phone, you can get to our leadership resource page where we have a category called margin by texting leader to 99581. Again, that's leader to 99581. And as always, if you need prayer or just want to talk with someone, we have people ready right here in this moment to do that. So if you're on Church Online, you can hit the live prayer button. If you're on social media, you can send us a message and we'd love to be there for you. Kids, you are up next. Children's Ministry is about ready to begin. And everyone else, we hope to see you back next week.
What does fear feel like to you? Maybe it's butterflies fluttering in your stomach, or it might seem like cold fingers creeping up your spine. Fear can feel like a lump in your throat that makes it hard to swallow. Or it might chase thoughts round and round inside your head, refusing to stop. Enough! When you face something hard, fear can show up in 100 different ways. It can threaten to stop you in your tracks. But you don't have to let fear be the boss of you. When fear shouts, "You can't do it!" stop. Take a deep breath. Listen for that still, quiet voice of God. God says, "Be strong and brave. Do not be afraid. Do not lose hope. I am the Lord your God. I will be with you everywhere you go." When you know that God is with you, you can keep going. You can walk straight through those fears. And when others see you choose to be brave, even when you're afraid, they can see God at work in your life. That's why courage is an amazing way to worship God with your life. Because worship is about more than just singing loud, it's all about living loud.
When I wake up, I know that you are with me every step of the way. You're strong enough to handle any fear that I face. Even things that scare me, 'cause they seem too big. Even all the hard things that make me wanna quit. You're bigger than it all, and you're in charge of it. And I don't feel so worried when I look to you, Jesus. Your love is unforgettable. Your strength is undeniable. With you, nothing is impossible. You are the reason, you are the reason I'm brave. You are the reason, you are the reason I'm brave. You are the reason, you are the reason I'm brave. When I look at how great you are, your kindness helps me believe that you are good, and with you I can do anything. Even things that scare me, 'cause they seem too big. Even all the hard things that make me wanna quit. You're bigger than it all, and you're in charge of it. And I don't feel so worried when I look to you, Jesus. Your love is unforgettable. Your strength is undeniable. With you, nothing is impossible. You are the reason, you are the reason I'm brave. You are the reason, you are the reason I'm brave. You are the reason, you are the reason I'm brave. Your love is unforgettable. Your strength is undeniable. With you, nothing is impossible. You are the reason, you are the reason I'm brave. You are the reason, you are the reason I'm brave. You are the reason, you are the reason I'm brave.
Welcome to Story Lab. This week we're talking about courage, while we take a look at the story of some spies who had a split decision on their mission report. Oh, and look out for this. Hey, I'm Amaya.
And I'm Zeke.
And we're talking about courage, which is being brave enough to do what you should, even when you're afraid.
So, let me get this straight. Fear is where courage starts?
Yep.
I could be a courage champion.
What are you afraid of?
Okay, super weird, but there's this bedpost in my aunt's guest room I'm kind of scared of walking past.
Okay, I mean, people are afraid of all kinds of things. I looked up some of the top fears.
Like what?
Number 5, fear of getting laughed at.
Ooh.
Number 4, fear of thunder and lightning. Number 3, fear of big dogs. Number 2, fear of heights. And number 1, fear of snakes and spiders.
Now my heart's pounding.
I know, right? When fear shows up, it can actually take over your body.
Fear really does go straight for the control system.
When you face a fear, your brain alerts your nervous system, which triggers the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This causes your blood pressure, heart rate, and breathing to increase. More blood flows to your limbs so you can throw a punch or run for your life. And some parts of your brain are so busy amping up your body that the thinking part of your brain can shut down.
Wow. No wonder we make such terrible decisions when we're afraid.
Yep, but there are things that we can do to face our fear. Like we can breathe deeply and slowly. And we can also ask questions about our fears.
Like, what do I really think that bedpost is gonna do to me?
Exactly.
Oh, great job holding up the bed.
You can even plan baby steps to face your fear, a little bit at a time.
Hey, what are you afraid of?
Crickets.
What?
Yeah.
What's in the box?
A cricket?
Oh, this is great. You can face your fear right here.
Yeah.
Okay, just gonna lift the box up really slowly. And then I'm just gonna open it really slowly.
Maybe after the story.
Well, okay, it's time for...
The story before the story.
Today, we're in the 4th book of the Old Testament, Numbers.
God promised to bless the whole world through Abraham's family, the Israelites, and give them a home in the land of Canaan. God delivered them from slavery in Egypt, leading them through the Red Sea.
In the desert, God showed deep love by giving the Israelites food and water. God also gave them rules to show them how to love God and love others.
At last, God led the people to the very edge of Canaan, the Promised Land.
And that's where our story starts.
Let's go!
Hey everyone!
Hi, Brian.
Okay, so about 2 years after crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites had finally made it to the very edge of Canaan, the land that God promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God told their leader Moses,
"Send some men to check out the land of Canaan. I am giving it to the Israelites. Send one leader from each of Israel's tribes."
So Moses called a leader from each of the 12 tribes.
Shammua, Shaphat, Caleb, Igal, Joshua, Palti, Gadiel, Gadi, Amiel, Sethur, Nabi, and Juel.
So once the gang was all together, Moses laid out a super secret spy mission for these guys.
I want you to see what Canaan is like. Are there a lot of people or just a few? Are they strong or weak? Do their towns have high walls? Oh, and study the land. Is the soil rich or poor? Are there trees? Bring back some of the food that grows there if you can.
So just like that, these 12 men snuck into Canaan just as God had instructed. Now, for about 6 weeks, they traveled the length of the country and saw the places where Abraham and his family had lived hundreds of years before. On their return journey, the spies cut a bunch of grapes so ginormous, it had to be carried on a pole between 2 men. You can bet that when they showed up in the Israelite camp at the end of 40 days, it made a pretty big stir. At first, the spies gave a glowing report.
Canaan is super awesome.
The land is filled with so many good things. It's practically flowing with milk and honey.
Yeah, check out these grapes.
But we can never go there.
The people who live there are powerful.
Their cities have high walls.
The people are like giants.
Even though the spies had seen many good things, they were stuck on their fears. Only Joshua and Caleb were brave enough to speak up.
We should go up and take the land. We can certainly do it.
No way. They're stronger than we are.
They're so ginormous that we look like crickets to them.
The Israelites chose to listen to fear. They went into complete panic mode, convinced they would be destroyed. They even begged to go back to Egypt. Joshua and Caleb tried to speak to them.
The land is very good. If the Lord is pleased with us, He'll lead us there. He will give it to us. But we've got to obey Him.
Yeah, don't be afraid of the people in the land. The Lord is with us.
Instead of listening to Joshua and Caleb, the Israelites talked about killing them. But in the midst of all this chaos, the glory of God appeared at the tent of meeting. God spoke to Moses.
How long will they refuse to believe in me?
Moses begged God to have mercy on the Israelites.
Lord, your love is great. Forgive the sin of these people, just as you've done so many times already. I have forgiven them, just as you asked. But not one of these people will see the land I promised to give them. But my servant Caleb has a different spirit. He follows me with his whole heart, so I will bring him into the land.
Joshua was also allowed to enter the land. God did forgive the Israelites for turning away again, but there were big consequences. Instead of forging ahead into Canaan, the Israelites ended up wandering and stuck in the wilderness for almost 40 years. Now, by that time, only Joshua and Caleb were still living to lead the new generation, their children, into Canaan. And fast forward, they did. At the end of 40 years, Joshua led the Israelites into the promised land. And right away, they came up to the walled city of Jericho. But with God's help, they faced their fears, and those impossibly strong walls came tumbling down. But that's another story for another day.
Wow. I mean, so the spies' fears were real. I mean, their enemies were really strong.
Yep, but Joshua and Caleb knew that God had already promised to help them.
Yeah, they had to make a choice to do the right thing, even when everyone else was giving into fear.
So, what's our part in the story?
Well, fear is totally normal, but God can still help you be brave and do the right thing.
Yeah, maybe you're in a group where a popular girl is saying mean things about another kid. Your friends might be afraid to speak up because they don't want to get laughed at, but you can be brave and you can speak up because that's not right.
Or maybe the fire alarm goes off and one of your friends is really panicked. That happened in my school.
Yeah, you can be the one to stop and help them calm down.
Right. You never have to face fear alone. When you believe in Jesus and follow Him, God's Spirit lives in you and can give you the courage to do the right thing.
Even if you are afraid.
And that's something awesome to hold on to.
Oh, for sure. See you next time.
So here's the thing. You can do what you should even when others are afraid.
Want to face that fear right now?
Sure. I mean, what's one giant evil cricket gonna do to me?
Baby steps.
Okay.
Just gonna pick it up real slowly.
Okay, remember your breathing.
Release the cricket! Thanks for joining us in the Story Lab. See you next time.